Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard de Amst 1 and the Rederij de Wester. This tour is the number 3 Airbnb activity in the world, and that's not because of the boat or because of me, that's because of you. We'll be sailing the canals for 2 hours. I'm considered to be a great captain and a lousy host, meaning that you're going to have to do everything yourself in regards to drinking and to eating. So all the drinks are on the boat and all the food's here. And along the way we'll be getting bitterballs. Bitterballs are the Dutch donation to the world cuisine, the only one so far. And they're said to contain traces of meat. So if there's anybody amongst you who doesn't eat meat, just tell me, then I'll order you the vegetarian balls because we have them as well. They'll be about 25 minutes into the ride. Until then, I'll be painting you a picture of the historic Amsterdam, how it used to be and how it is now, how it became to be the most liberal city in the world, or perceived to be. After that, after the bitterballs, we'll be touring for another hour and a half, and that's when the magic starts to happen. And that's you. Your questions will make this tour. We've had groups who met up 3 days after this tour together because they met on this tour, so that could be here as well. So don't be shy. I'm a Dutch guy, however. Here in Holland, we don't care about emotions or feelings. We just tell it how it is. We don't dance around the handbag, and we will tell you. I'll give you straight answers to straight questions. But it's a fun thing. It's really good to experience, and this is a very confined environment, so you might test it. You might learn something. You never know. So. Amsterdam, this area here where we're standing now, the Keizergracht, is the middle of 3 canals. But before we could make the canals, we had to make Amsterdam. Amsterdam, before here, was a swamp. And we had, and this is no joke, we had to drain the swamp. And we drained the swamp here. And if you drain the swamp, you're left with peat. And peat is a functional material. You can dig it out and dry it and burn it. It becomes turf. But you can also stack it up. Use it as a small, make it into a shelter. Nothing comfortable, but it's shelter. But the thing is that if you dig away the peat, the water returns. And it was only until we were able to pump out the water continuously into a higher basin, that's when we say that you keep your feet dry. And when you keep your feet dry, you can settle. You can grow crop and have cattle. And that's around 1120, 1150, that's when it started to happen. Now, the story of when we started to drain the swamp until we had dry feet took about 250 years. And during these 250 years, people were fighting the water here shoulder to shoulder, and that meant that class differences disappeared. So it meant much more that you were able to work hard and provide for your family and your community than it did what your name was or what your heritage was. Amongst this, Amsterdam is considered to be the cradle of modern capitalism. So welcome home to a lot of you. I had a Chinese guy the other day and he said, welcome home to a lot of you, except for you guys. Anyway, but so Amsterdam was also different in the fact that the land that they made was owned by private people. It wasn't owned by a big landlord. So these private people, they wanted to know what was happening with their land. So there was already democracy going here before any other city had that in the world. Now, skip some time, and Luther has reformed the church. And Luther, he brought Protestantism to the area here, especially the area around Amsterdam became Protestant. Amsterdam remained Catholic for a long time, until it became apparent that becoming Protestant was better business-wise. So it was basically it was a business decision rather than a religious decision. And Amsterdam decided to become Protestant. Now, there was a king of Spain, and he tried to bring back the Catholic faith to Amsterdam and the area around us. We call this the 80-Year War. And Amsterdam defended itself by flooding the lands around the city, and this made it a swamp overnight, and the army couldn't pass with its heavy guns and horses. And Amsterdam became a refuge for people fleeing this war. Protestant people from all over Western Europe, even France, came to Amsterdam. Now, Amsterdam had a rule that you were only allowed to stay here if you had found 2 people who'd be your guarantor. A guarantor would pay your bills if you couldn't pay your bills. A guarantor wouldn't do it on your blue eyes. He would require some deposit, either gold, silver, or diamonds. So Amsterdam was filling up with very, very rich people. And it's for those people that we dug these canals. Right? For these rich people. Now, they also planned this city. We're now on the Keizergracht currently The Herengracht and the Keizergracht were going to be residential. The third canal, the Prinsengracht, was a working canal. If you know that all these houses on the canals were built without a sewer, these canals were doubling as an open sewer at the same time. So the water was flowing the first two canals from this side to this side, taking with it all the debris flowing into the canals. And in the third canal, the Prinsengracht, that's where the working class was living. That's where all the debris ended up, right? The side canals to the Prinsengracht are not perpendicular to the canals, but at an angle. So the water was flowing with all the debris around the corner and into the fields, because the water in the third canal was flowing the other way. They designed the city, 1600. Let's plan a city, right? Utterly amazing. After this, we went to New York, right? Manhattan was a swamp. We drained the swamp in Manhattan. The avenues of Manhattan were the water lines where we pumped in the water to keep our feet dry. The blocks between the avenues are similar to the blocks between the canals here. Apart from that, we have Harlem, we have Brooklyn, which is Breukelen. Staten Island is the Staten-Generaal, the Dutch government. There's so many connections between New York and Amsterdam. It's really thrilling. So is anybody from New York? We can relate. Apart from the history, we have some other things in common as well. I'll get to that later. We'll now come to the Prinsengracht, the former working canal. It's the longest of the three. It was built in the poorest quality of architecture from those days. So over the centuries, a lot of buildings came down or were burned down or were torn down and replaced with modern architecture of that era. So you find a lot more difference in architecture on this canal. Also, the houses are smaller, so there's always a lot more people on the streets. Shut up. There's a lot more people on the streets than on the other two canals. Much more lively canal here. We start off on the left with the Anne Frank house. And the big tower next to the Anne Frank house is the Wester Tower. Now, the Wester Tower is the most important tower of Amsterdam. In the 1600s, you couldn't get a street plan. There were no street names yet. People would come here and they would say, okay, I live close to this and this tower, and you would get a tower plan from the side, so you could see which tower was where. And then you would go to that tower and then ask around. People would know each other or of each other. And houses could be identified by images on the wall in the facade. So you would go to the house with the grey whale, and then 3 doors down or 3 doors up, and that's how you would be guided to your friend's house. So a lot more interaction in those days. Now, on top of this tower, you see a big crown. And this crown was given to the city by Maximilian of Austria. When he visited Amsterdam, he became sick. They say it was syphilis. He was treated, we don't know how, without antibiotics, but as a thank you, he granted us his crown. What a nice guy. Oh, he paid for the tower, right. Oh, wow. Yeah, great guy. Great guy. So, what he also said with this crown, he promised us to protect us. So if any army would attack us, he would send up his army. And when we were expanding the city, we needed to set out a huge city wall to the west, which needed a huge foundation as well. But thanks to syphilis, we could suffice with an earth wall with a single brick layer. So every year we still celebrate this on this canal with Civilfest. No, it's the Gay Pride Parade. It's on this canal. It's a parade of 80 to 90 barges being pushed and pulled through this canal, and it's a huge party. Last year, 2019, we had over 400,000 people on this canal, sitting at the canal at 9 a.m. in the morning, guarding their spots to be sure that they had their spot on this canal.
Wow. Really cool.
Yeah, it is gorgeous, isn't it? Now, this canal, being the former working canal, also has the highest amount of houseboats on the canal. Houseboats came to be after the Industrial Revolution. Until then, they were the only means of transport for cargo. And then trains and trucks took over their jobs as cargo transporters. And the boats, the people owning those boats, put them on the side. They found jobs ashore, and they slowly started to remodel their boats into homes, because they were already living on the boats, but in a very tiny quarter at the rear. And suddenly they were rebuilding the whole boat. Until the 70s and the 80s of last century, it was considered to be poor man's housing. Now it's as hip and happening as any apartment in Amsterdam. So it's very expensive. But it is, however, quite difficult to get a permit. To get a mortgage to own a house like that, or a houseboat like that. A normal apartment you can get a mortgage for, because you can't move those. You can move boats, so they have the liability to the bank. So you can get a loan, but you can't deduct your mortgage interest as you can with apartments. Now, people always ask me, would you like to live on a houseboat? Yeah, I wouldn't mind, definitely. Although I've got some young kids, but here in Holland we just throw them in the water when they're full, and if they don't come up, we'll make a new one, and if they do, they can swim. So we're so pragmatic here, and it's amazing. But anyway, I would love to live on a houseboat, but not on this canal. Because just imagine yourself on a sunny, warm, sunny evening, 10 p.m., and there's always guys. I don't know why it's always guys. Like 8 guys in a boat, and they start to sing. Always, the later they always think they can sing, right? I mean, and they'll pass your houseboat like this, just next to your bedroom. And when you've just decided to get an early night in, and it's warm, you want to have your window open, and then this boat passes by with 8 singing guys. You don't want that, right? So another boat company, they thought they had the solution. They came up with the idea of a silent disco. Right? You have done that? Silent disco with his earphones on, and you see everybody dancing, right? It looks ridiculous, right? Yeah? And then they put on a song where everybody starts to sing along with, 30 guys. Have you tried singing along with the earphones on? It's dreadful. It's terrible, right? It's really, really bad. So no, we don't do that anymore. So yes, I would like to live in a houseboat, but not here. Now, I said I would come back to New York. Here in Amsterdam, we have the problem that people, even in the Netherlands, outside Amsterdam, they hate the people of Amsterdam and love the city. They think we're arrogant and cocky. Well, we are. But we're also prettier, wittier. We have a better soccer team. So, we have compassion for the rest, and that compassion pisses them off even more, right? I mean, but it turns out to be that New Yorkers have the same thing, and Paris and Londoners and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's some not really new, but it's been here for a long time. The arrogance of Amsterdam has been here. I mean, Amsterdam itself feels itself more important than the country at some points, and which is only logic because we are. But anyway, so these houseboats all fit under the bridge. So even this one, you can't think about it. But yeah, I saw it when it was moored in. They had boarded up the whole side of the boat, so it was waterproof, and then they weighed it down with containers, garbage containers inside, filled them with water, so it all came down, and then it fit under the bridge, and then they pulled and pushed it to its place now. This is my favourite canal because of the high energy, but also, it holds most of my memories. I used to be a real estate agent here in Amsterdam until 2010. I had a bankruptcy. This was my office here, number 533.
On the left side?
And the right side. That window was my office.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it was cool, but it was too expensive. And I kept my staff too long. So when we had the recession, the bank crisis of 2008, 2009, 2010, I lasted until 2010, and then I had a bankruptcy. The same day my wife decided to divorce me. That's for better and for worse, and that kind of bollocks.
Really fucked up.
Yeah, well, shit happens. In the end, it turned out to be a lose-win situation. You can assess which one was the winner. Took a while.
But you're happy now?
I'm happy now, yeah. I mean, after my bankruptcy, I tried different jobs in sales and tried to land a proper job. I remarried in 2013. I found a lovely new wife. We have two more kids, so now I've got 5. And 2 years ago, I said to my wife, my current wife, said, "Listen, darling, I'm going to be a full-time captain." And she said, "You do your best, Mara," which is do your best, But the addition to of the word maar,
Bring
depending if it's a full moon, uneven year, or if your baker has married a red-haired woman, could mean anything between I back you all the way until there's the door if you don't succeed. Right? Until now it's the first, he backs me all the way, but you never know how long it lasts, eh? Okay guys, so here on the left you'll see 7 houses, which has the names of 7 provinces on them. In those days we were the Republic of 7 provinces, and these were embassies to these provinces because Amsterdam was the capital, The Hague was where the government was, and these buildings were embassies. Now the fact that Amsterdam put these embassies on this canal was a huge middle finger, if not two, to the government in The Hague, because this was the canal where all the debris ended up, remember? Here you'll see names as Utrecht and Gelderland, but also Zeeland, which is the old Zeeland compared to New Zealand, and Holland. And I'll break down Holland for you. Amsterdam is in Holland. Holland is in the Netherlands, and the Netherlands is in the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Now, as I said, the arrogance of Amsterdam has been as old as Amsterdam is, basically. I think 10 years ago, a law was passed that coffee shops were only allowed to sell soft drugs to Dutch citizens. Yeah, right, said Amsterdam, that's not going to fly here, right? But we had a bit of a problem because the other part of the law meant that we were not allowed to sell drugs to, that a coffee shop could not be closer to a secondary school than 300 yards. Now, on my right is Leidseplein, and there's the oldest coffee shop of Amsterdam, the Bulldog, in a former police station. And around the corner is the Berlage Lyceum, Gymnasium, which is one of the most prestigious secondary schools. And we solved this in a very Amsterdam manner, very pragmatic way. We sent a group of civil servants there, and they discovered that most of the pupils used the rear door entrance of the building. And when you walk from the coffee shop around the school building to the rear door entrance, you're way over 300 yards, by a yard and a half, right? So problem solved, there you go. That's how we do it. So here I'm going to stop for a while, just going to hop off the boat. I'm going to get the bitterballs, and I'm going to give you a proper introduction to the Dutch donation to the world cuisine, which we're so proud of. Bitterballs, we have them at weddings, funerals, office parties, birthday parties, get-togethers. We eat them whenever we can, yet they are made of leftover food, right? I mean, it's the last meat on the bone, which you put into a pot, you cook into a broth until the meat falls off. You take out the bone, you put in heaps of spices to cover the flavors that you don't want, and then you make a roux from flour and butter, so there's no potato inside, and you let it cool off. It becomes really thick. You can scoop them into balls, crust them, you freeze them, and well, frozen, you fry them. There you go. your recipe for bitterballs. A lot of work for leftover meat, but still, it's our favorite food.
Nice. And it's here on your right side.
Yeah. We also have them in rolls, then they're called croquettes. And those croquettes, they also sell at the McDonald's here, the Mac Croquette, where they are on a burger with some mustard sauce. And there's another place called Fibo. If you come past the Fibo, you should go in because it's typically Dutch. They have a heated vending wall with small glass doors. And if you go in there, you just put your money into the column of your wishes, and then you open a small window and there's your food. So you have instant food. Now, obviously we're going to be friends for life for the rest of the day on this boat here. And if you go and party on tonight with the whole group and somebody comes up to you tonight and says, hey, fancy a diagonal at the Fibo? That's not a sexual innuendo. It's actually an eating contest where you both start at the top end and diagonally you work your way through the windows and the first one reaching the bottom wins. It's on my resume, but I'll tell you that it's not worth it, honestly. 2 weeks later, I still wasn't so sure that I did the right thing. But if somebody comes up to you and does that, just tell them, sorry, my captain told me no, send them to me, I'll deal with them. Don't worry. So guys, this is Amstel River, the name giver to our city. They put a dam in the River Amstel around 1250, and that became known as the Amstelige Damme, and that later on became Amsterdam. We don't try to make things very difficult here. The bridge you see here, this landmark bridge, is the meager bridge, or the skinny bridge, in Dutch magere brug. The urban myth to this bridge is that there was a father who had 2 daughters and they were both unmarried and they were fighting each other all the time. And the father was so fed up with them that he bought them a house on either side of the river. And when the father died, they not only discovered that he was very rich, but they also liked each other. But to visit each other, they had to walk all the way to that bridge or all the way to that bridge over there. And they decided to build themselves a bridge, but that bridge was so narrow that only one person could pass at the same time. And we are stingy here in the Netherlands, but we like to call each other out on their stinginess even better. So the people of Amsterdam soon called this a very meager bridge, a magere brug, meaning that it could have made it somewhat wider and could spend some more money on it since they were not married and they didn't have any kids and they were very rich to begin with. Until now, it's only used for pedestrians and bikes, so no cars. We'll go over. There's also an urban myth that if you kiss each other on this bridge, you remain together. Bollocks. Anyway. So here, this is the Hermitage Museum, and it's a spin-off of the Russian St. Petersburg Hermitage. The original St. Petersburg Hermitage can only show 5% of its total art collection. The other 95% is in storage. So this Hermitage Museum can have a pick on the other 95%. Although it's not a given fact that everything they ask for that they will get. However, a couple of years ago they had 2 Rembrandts on show. Now, when you walk into that room and you will you see those 2 Rembrandt paintings, you immediately recognize Rembrandt, because those paintings were commissioned by Russians in those days, and when they were finished they were sent to Russia straight away. So nobody had seen them before in the Netherlands. They were sent to Russia as 400 years ago. So after 400 years they came back. It was an amazing sight. Those were 2 beautiful Rembrandt paintings, but on the other side there, the red stone building over there.
On the left side?
Yeah, here, the number 216, number 218 Amstel. On my left, number 218 Amstel River. That's the home of the family 6. The 6th family came to Amsterdam fleeing the war with the King of Spain. They were Protestants, and they were traders in pigments. Pigments are used to dye cloth. In those days, Amsterdam was filthy rich. The people here were absolutely making bundles of money. There's a Dutch saying that money was coming out of their armpits. They no longer had pockets to stick it in, right? And so people wanted to distinct themselves, and being traders in pigments was a very good trade to be in. So they were wealthy. The second generation of this family, the first Jan VI, he made it as an element to the council of the city. And he befriended Rembrandt during his life. And Rembrandt painted his picture, and together with the picture of his granddaughter. Now, 400 years later, as you know, I've made a board game about Amsterdam, and in this board game I gave this house a very tiny role, so we could offer a first edition of this board game to the current Jan VI, because the 11th Jan VI is now living in this house, and it worked. We were able to present him this board game, and we got a private viewing of the house. And this girl, she took us on a journey, much more than on a tour. And when we ended up in this room where these 2 Rembrandt paintings were, of the father of the Jan VI and his granddaughter, she first started to talk about the Jan VI painting, which struck me rather strange, because you normally end with the most important piece. But she ended up with the girl. This girl is a smaller painting, and she's holding a lace glove over her hand. And this lace glove is so delicately painted, while the rest is somewhat more vaguely, and the light seems to be focused on her hands, as if Rembrandt knew that 400 years later these people would still have the glove, because the guide opened a drawer and says, and here's the glove. That glove's still there, right? Like, it's amazing. It was so cool. So on my right here you'll see the dance theatre and the opera hall, and together with the city hall, which in Dutch is Stadhuis, so the Amsterdam people will call it Stopera, which is not official name. They try to get us to say Stadhuis and Opera, but we don't. We always say Stopera. The name Stopera comes actually from a group which were protesting the build of this opera house And they said that was the group Stop Opera, and that became Stopera. On my right, if you look into the side canal, you will see a drawbridge, and I'll tell you a story about that drawbridge later, but you have to see it. And on the other side, on the left, you'll see the dancing houses. The dancing houses were houses built so near to the river that the ground was so soft that they started to sway in every way. And although everybody says that the floors inside are leveled, I'm pretty sure that if you end up Monday morning, you know that in one corner all the empty bottles were collected. Right, there's the dancing houses, and here you see this drawbridge over there. Now, this drawbridge is our version of the Pont des Arts as in Paris. The bridge where everybody puts their love locks on. Those padlocks where you put your name on and you throw your key in the water and you remain together forever, and that kind of bollocks. When the accident in Paris happened, when the screen fell in the Seine River, the council asked if this bridge was dangerous. So the council decided to send 2 civil servants to cut away all the padlocks on the chain there. It took them like 3 days, well, civil servants. And a month later had to be back because people kept on putting these padlocks back. And this kept on like a monthly thing. And then questions were asked in the council how much this was costing, because we are Protestants and we are frugal, we are stingy. And that turned out to be 20,000 euros a year. Then a guy got up and said, listen, I walk my dog, I live in the street, I walk my dog every night. I've got an angle grinder on a battery. I can cut away the padlocks every night. I'll do it for half, for 10,000 a year. And if I do it every night, people won't see padlocks. There will be fewer padlocks there, so it will be better for everybody. City council said, wow, pragmatic, yeah, these 2 civil servants can do some other things and we save 10,000 euros and the problem is solved. Great deal. What they didn't know was this guy owned a store in the street selling padlocks, like with 100 the same keys, you know, and at the end of the day, he could just open his ones he had sold and then cut away the ones he didn't, and he would clean them up and resell them again.
Smart one.
Until it got rated out. So here, the tower you see straight ahead is the Mint Tower. It's not a church tower. It was actually a guard tower at the end of the city wall. And when we torn down the wall, the tower remained, and the people of Amsterdam requested a clock so they could tell the time. We're so bloody pragmatic. There we go. And now we're sailing into the old city, the area which was there before the canal were dug. Mind you, the buildings in this area are mainly younger than the ones on the canals, because until the canals were dug, all the buildings in Amsterdam were made of timber, of wood, because of the problems with the foundation. We are still sitting on a 50 feet thick slab of swamp, of bubblegum, if you will. Anything heavy that you construct, any construction which you build upon this layer will sink into the ground slowly but surely. So you need to give it a foundation. And we found those foundations in trees, very long, straight trees. And those trees, they don't grow in a swamp. They grow in areas like what we now call Germany and Poland and the Baltics and Scandinavia. As early as the 1400s, you already imported those trees from that area. Now, all these trees would come here by boat. And any boat could carry up to 25 to 50 trees in one time. Now, if you understand that the Palace on Dam Square alone is built upon 13,500 trees as a support, you can understand there was a continuous flow of boats coming towards Amsterdam when we started to build these canal houses and these canals. Not alone with trees, but also with bricks, because they can be made here as well, and other building materials and other trade stuff, right? So if people now complain that Amsterdam is too busy with tourists, then it was busy, really busy. But the other thing was that all these boats, they didn't want to go back empty. They wanted some merchandise, and they took back what we had here in abundance, and that was beer. Because people were drinking here beer rather than water. It was a lot safer to drink beer. because beer was cooked. It was purified and pasteurized, if you will, and the water wasn't. It was dirty, right? So kids were even drinking beer. Personally, I still think it's safer to drink beer than no water, but that's me. And the other thing was that the canals doubling as an open sewer, people were holding small boxes. We call them snuff boxes, where the top of the box was pierced with some small holes. Inside there would be very fragrant material. So if the stench of the canals was too much, you would stick it under your nose and you could still walk on, right? So basically people were drinking beer all day, we were snuffing the stuff all day, we were high and drunk, and still we call this the golden century, right? Something to be said for drugs. So this is the oldest canal of Amsterdam, and this is where all the history happened. Basically, every building here has a history behind it. It also is the canal of the red light area. So it's not my favorite because of the red lights, it's my favorite because of all the buildings. Although I do have some stories about the red lights as well. On the left in a minute, you will see a house or building with black shutters. That's a city-run pawn shop. Not a porn, but pawn. It says above the door, do you have money nor goods? Please walk on. If you want the first and have the letter, come in, I'll give you a fair interest. Until today, it's a city-organized pawn store where you can go with your stuff, get some money. If you don't retrieve it within the year, they will set it in auction. At the rear side of this building is a store where you can buy all the stuff which they didn't sell at auction. It was set up 400 years ago for business people. Because in those days you would invest in boats going away to the Far East, and a boat could take maybe 2 years. And if your boat was 6 months late, you could run out of money, right? So for those people, they could bring some art or some furniture here to get some money to tide themselves over. And then when their ship had come in, literally, they would be rich again and they could retrieve it again. So it was to have business going on, right? Bankruptcies were costing much more than keeping people alive. That they already understood in those days by helping them this way. The other way we helped business people was that we had a single currency here in Amsterdam. Everybody coming here to do business could change their currency into the Amsterdam currency. So everybody was trading in the same currency. It was a euro before the euro, like 400 years before the euro was set up here. So Amsterdam was doing everything to have business going. It was amazing. We also had the first stock exchange here. The thing was that in Spain and in France, Spain and in Portugal, the king could say, listen, I'll take taxpayers' money, I'll rig up 5 ships and send them to the east, and all the revenues are for me. So the kings were very mad. They needed that money for wars and stuff. Here in the Netherlands, we didn't have a king. We had we were a republic. So here we had private entrepreneurs doing this, and they set up groups of entrepreneurs to rig up these ships and to go to the Far East. And that was a very expensive operation. So they decided to give out shares so you could buy a part of a boat at the beginning and later on a part of the company. And if your boat would be back And we know, because we still have those ledgers where the first 1,000 shareholders are listed. Amongst those were servants of the first people, of the people who started this enterprise. When their ship came back, they were no longer servants. They were middle class. They could buy a home. The first tour to the Far Indies was a disaster. They sent out 3 boats with more than 400 men. Only 80 men survived. But the small amount of pepper they brought back was enough to pay for the whole operation. That's how lucrative it was. Now, back to the red light areas. Anybody has an idea where red light come from?
No.
Why are red lights, you know exactly when you pass a small road and there's a door and a small window and a small red light in the corner, you know exactly what's going on. You know,
Yes.
right? How does it come to be? I'll tell you why. Now we are a welfare state. If you're sick, you can get money from the government, right? But before that, if you were a prostitute and you were sick, you didn't get any money at all, right? There was nothing. So these women needed to work, but a lot of diseases come with red spots and rashes. So if you put on a red light, they will blemish those red spots and rashes, and you don't see them anymore. And the woman can still work and earn money. Guys, there's nothing romantic about the red light area, believe me, nothing. I mean, the prostitutes themselves are now trying to buy a large PR rally to make us believe that they do this by free will. It's their choice, it's their profession, they choose. I'll start believing that if a 23-year-old comes up to me and say, I made my career choice, I'm going to be a prostitute in the red light area. If that happens, then I'll start believing it. But until then, I have my doubts. On the other hand, and this is really where it becomes double. On the other hand, I've got a 20-year-old girl. And Amsterdam is the safest city in the world for women. The crime rate against women in Amsterdam is so considerably lower than any other city in the world that it has to do with the red light area. It can't be without. There's no direct link in any reports, but there has to be. But it is hard. Now, for 200 years, Catholics were not allowed to go to Mass in Amsterdam. They were allowed to go to Mass, but not visibly. They were not the churches, the Catholic churches became Protestant, and the Catholics went to secret churches, hidden in attics and barns and cellars and dens. Now, the big church, the old church on my left, started out as a Catholic church, St. Nicholas Church, because St. Nicholas is the patron of Amsterdam. And the very big church at the end is also a St. Nicholas Church, because St. Nicholas is the patron of children, Santa Claus. Right? Amsterdam, the Dutch took Santa to Manhattan. The English took it to England, stuck it to Christmas, and then Coca-Cola made a commercial. St. Nicholas is also the patron of sailors and of prostitutes. So what better city than Amsterdam to have 4 St. Nicholas churches? So this started out as a St. Nicholas church, and that became a St. Nicholas church as well. And there's another St. Nicholas church on this stretch I'll tell you about later. First, we're going to come to my favourite square of Amsterdam, because this square shows you my Amsterdam in one image. This square behind the old church shows you a P-curl on the side. This is a green metal thing on the left. You'll see that that's a public toilet for men. That's to try to prevent them from peeing in the canals directly and falling in. The red light windows are the older South American ladies. Then the cafe next to it is called Quartier Poutin, which is French for prostitution quarters. And the white door building in the alley over there, that's a daycare center for children. I kid you not. This shows you my Amsterdam in the sense that your freedom ends where somebody else's frustration begins. Right? This is Amsterdam in one image. Absolutely love it, especially when it's so empty as today. So the third St. Nicholas Church, a hidden secret church, is on my left, right at the top corner, where you see these 3 wooden shutters. It's one of my favourite museums because it's a museum. It's called Our Dear Lord in the Attic. You see the red flag where there's a museum. It's my favourite museum for a couple of reasons. One, there's no lines of people. You just go in and buy a ticket, you're in. You're in and out probably within the hour. You get to see a proper 16th century canal house, how it used to be in those days, 16th century, right? And then on top of the attic is this church, and it's an amazing, beautifully restored church. But most of all, when you come down, here's a beer brewery. So it ticks most of my boxes of being a great museum. You know that Venice is called the Amsterdam of the South, which we agree to, of course. If you look to the right in a minute, you'll see the end of the canal where we are most similar to Venice. It's now closed for all boating traffic because they want to get the focus away from the red light area. About 8 years ago, when we could still sail these canals, on the Saturday nights there would be a circle of like a traffic jam of boats going around this group of houses where we would be looking at the people, we'd be looking at the girls, but also there were 2 Italian restaurants on that canal. You could knock on their kitchen door, order a pizza, pay for it, and the next door you'll get it into your boat. It was amazing. So the street we just went under is called the Zeedijk, which means that was the dike protecting us from the sea at the very first location in Amsterdam. So everything you see on this side is on reclaimed land, a man-made land. We've always taken this, whenever we had a problem with space, we would take to the water and make new land. We still do that today. So here's Central Station on the left. Now there's a couple of places where you have a great view over Amsterdam. One is at the end of this water, you'll see it later, straight ahead. It's a green building, it's the Nemo Museum, and the Dutch people love that because it's for free. You can walk up to the roof, if the museum is open, you can walk up to the roof, halfway of the roof, and you have a great view over the city towards the right. The other part, the other place where you have a great view over the city is on the left. You'll see the DoubleTree by Hilton Hotel. They have the Sky Lounge. Depending on the drinks you order, you have a great view over the city on both sides, both north and south, and you can make it as expensive as you want to. But by far the best is, and that's, you'll have to come up to my left rear with your, and you'll see a big building there with a white pillar on top of the 3 axes of Amsterdam. That's the Amsterdam Lookout. Now, I would have never believed myself telling you that that was the greatest place. I thought it was the biggest tourist trap ever when they opened it. But until last April, when I was there with a group of Finnish civil servants, and we had a circular city tour, and we ended up there. The elevator ride up to the top deck alone is amazing. They've got a see-through roof like our boat has, and they've mounted flashing tube lights in the elevator shaft, and it feels like you're a rocket projected in the air. And you come to the top deck and you have got a great 360-degree view. As today we had a clear day, we could almost see the sea. It was amazing. On the way back we had the the karaoke elevator, and there's also, I just didn't point it out, there's also a black rack, and there's a swing there which swings you over the edge. It's called over the edge.
Building is that?
That's the music school.
Yeah.
The ones to the left, the OBA,
Yeah.
they got an award for the most prestigious interior design.
Okay.
That's the public library. You can enter it. The school you can't, but the library you can. And the building site on the left, here with the red cranes, is the new head office of Booking.com. It's an Amsterdam-based company, and they've been building this building for quite a while now. They had some problems with the foundation. Who would have thought? Anyway, and they're a year and a half behind schedule, so the building is already too small for the company when they open it up. So as I've informed correctly, they will remain, their office on the Heergracht will remain. The other offices they're going to vacate, and then they're going to move into here. But if you were wondering about moving to Amsterdam, look on their website. They're still looking for like 800 people. At least they were. So on my right, you see the big Nemo Museum, which is had an Italian designer. He copied the tunnel underneath, the car tunnel connecting Amsterdam south and north. And because this is the old marina area, he made it into a bow of a ship. He copied the angle of the tunnel descending with the building rising. Now, originally being from Italy and he loved the bling bling, he designed this with mirrors on the side, his cladding. But the city of Amsterdam decided that would be too much, so they decided on copper, which was a very good decision because had it been mirrors, I would have been toast by now. But and on my left, you see the former Marines area. They finally come to an arrangement with Amsterdam. They're selling 80% of this area to the city council, and they'll keep 20% where they can still have some men. There's a ground where a helicopter can land, so in cases of emergency they can still use it, because otherwise we wouldn't have had any military presence in the city at all. So on the left you'll see the big pirate's ship, as they say, the big ship. This is a one-on-one replica of a ship of the Amsterdam, which was supposed to be the flagship of the fleet of this, the Dutch East India Trading Company, but it sank on its maiden voyage to south of England near Hastings, and that was a bit of a bummer. This was this is built as a museum boat. It was built in 1985. It doesn't sail, but it's a one-on-one replica, and it was made the same way, so without power tools, and it's a great thing to see. The only thing they altered were the captain's quarters at the rear, because in those days people were 5 feet tall, 1.50 meters. Nowadays we're the tallest people in the world here in the Netherlands. So even kids are a lot taller than 5 feet. So that's why they made the ceilings in the captain's quarters a little bit higher. Still not very high, but a little bit higher. Now on a boat like this there would be 250 to 300 men going on a trip to the Far East. And a trip to the Far East could take 2 years, right? 11 months going there, 2 months of trading and doing up the boat, and 11 months back. The other day I had a gay couple on the boat. They said 250 men on the boat. They said. Then I explained to them, that there were no sanitary provisions there. There was no bathrooms, no nothing. They decided, okay. By the way, it's a beautiful museum. It's part of the shipping museum, and if you can go there, please do.